the Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Stephen, along with my co-host, Mike. You know, we spend a lot of time looking at systems that build connection and gratitude and love into business. And I'm excited for today's show because this is one of those systems we've used for a few years now. And if you're worried that you can't sell something like this into your company, well, there's a lot of stats around building emotional connection. You've probably heard us talk about, you know, as a marketing agency, the importance of that. That's where that lifetime value skyrockets. That's where your customers become your best marketers with word of mouth. So if leadership is struggling with the EQ, this is a way you can build a piece of that into your company's DNA. Mike, introduce our guest today.
And Steve, I gotta say, if you have a tough time selling Thnks through your company, it's probably the wrong company that you're working for. Yes, so our guest today is none other than Brendan Kamm. He's the CEO of Thnks. It's the first global platform built really on the principles of the gratitude commerce. And we use it here at Zero Company for this reason, right? Thnks really empowers us as professionals to strengthen the relationships really through personalization, through thoughtful gestures, as well as, you know, being able to combine that with human connection through this technology. With more than 20 years of experience in media, technology, sales, and client engagement, Brendan has seen how the absence of gratitude can really erode trust and consequently, you know, weaken business relationships. So, and that insight really, you know, led him to find Thnks, which today is being used by 120 of the Fortune 500 companies and more than 20,000 teams globally. As well, the platform has even facilitated millions of dollars in charitable donations while redefining how appreciation drives loyalty and engagement in business. Brendan, we are so, no pun intended, thankful to have you on the show today here with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike, Stephen. I truly appreciate it. I mean, part of our mission at Thnks is to educate on the power of gratitude in business, and it's exactly what you all are doing. So I couldn't be happier to be here with you today.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation. Looking forward to it. Brendan, you've said that transactional interactions erode trust. I think we've kind of all felt that sometimes in our lives, where that you get that ick feeling, right, with some aspect of doing business with someone. What was the turning point where you realized like gratitude and emotional intelligence needed to be built into business itself?
Yeah, it kind of came over time. I started my career in media and advertising, and that business, at least at the time, was purely relationships. When you were dinners and lunches and games, and you just the sales reps were in your office and the agency, and you were just in this constant interaction. So that was normal to me as I started my career. And as I evolved in my career and I moved into more technology and startups, tech is great, but it just moves at hyper speed, right? Grow, 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 grow. And so everything became much more transactional. And I don't think I realized it at the time. And then all of a sudden, it's like years pass, you know, 7, 8 years down the road. And I'm looking back and I'm going, man, every relationship I have in business is from my early days in media and advertising, right? I don't really have a lot of people I'm just calling up from all the tech, and we did hundreds of tech deals, right? But it was missing, right? And I started thinking about that, and I'm like, man, the first people I called when I would take a new job or start something new were always the media people, the advertising people. And you just quickly realize, well, it's because we had a real relationship. Right? We talked about things outside of the deal and the transaction. It was, you know, what is your family up to? What's your favorite sports team? It doesn't have to be anything super deep. It's still business. But I think having that experience, and then if I do tie it into one moment, there was this one time, there was this small unexpected gesture that really turned the tides on a big deal. It was a challenging relationship we were having. We were in an RFP trying to renew this deal. And it was actually my now co-founder who I was working with at the time, who had come to me and was like, you know what, just out of pure, like, they seem super busy. They kept mentioning how they're working all night, right? And so he's like, let's just gather up, like, we need to send something. Let's send over dinner and just have it for them. Don't ask for anything, just send it over. And I look at that as sort of one of the sort of basis points of how we started Thnks, because that was painful to do, to be honest. it took a long time to figure it out. Where's it going? And are they going to be there? And all these sort of experiences. I'm like, man, this is what we should be doing all the time though, right? And that actually did change the tenor of that deal. And it just changed the way we interacted following that, right? That little thing that was just, we hear you that you're super busy and this is tough for you. We're there for you. And so all these things start to click and you're like, man, this needs to be something that I can just do. And that was really the basis of Thnks, right? I don't want to send swag, and that's all fine. That's marketing, but it's not relationship building, right? It's got to be thoughtful. It's got to be in the moment.
Yeah, I think about it like once a month we have these standing meetings where we kind of ask as part of that meeting, how your product was used, how Thnks was used, because we're looking for creative ways to use it. But there are a lot of those, what we hear from our account managers, there's a lot of those times where life comes at people, right? One of our clients or something in the client's personal life kind of hit hard. And what I like is that our team is kind of empowered right now. They're empowered to do something. Like you said, like you mentioned, it was like a big deal to kind of go through all those steps, to do something nice or kind for this person. But what I those are my favorite stories, is that, just something came at someone and our team didn't even have to run anything up a ladder or didn't have to have a discussion with anyone. They were able to just go into your system and be like, okay, hey, I'm going to send them something, just human to human, just because, this is what I would love to do. And like you said, it's just made it so simple. And that's what I just love about the product. Now, I'm glad you kind of brought up that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we've all had that experience too. So I think of, just looking back, one of our clients, a pretty tough, customer. He was is a motivational speaker. And so we would get into, some pretty difficult, conversations at times.
This former military guy, I think I know who you're talking about, Mark.
Yeah.
Where it was just, he had kind of that attitude a little bit, which is,
Yeah. And I agree, right? Customers should be, tough when we're providing a service. They need to get, what they're paying for. But I just, knew, just given the fact that he was a motivational speaker and, his mind was really, after this conversation we were having, was really on a trip that was coming up. And so I sent him, Uber rides, like right through the Thnks system. And he appreciated that gesture, but it just, I think as well, helped him to understand that, hey, this is more than just, like we're talking about, a transactional thing. It's more than just business. Like, we care about each other, right? And it's really about relationships. So, Brendan, something that as well, we've seen improvement on is within the employee base and employee engagement. Of course, our employees, our team members, they are our greatest asset to the organization. So I'm just kind of curious as well, like how you've seen the small, thoughtful gestures have an impact on not just the client relationships, but even on employee engagement.
Yeah, I think, look, employee engagement, a lot of times it's even just about psychological safety, right? When you feel that and you feel that someone appreciates you, you can become more collaborative, more creative, more resilient, right? You want to put yourself out there more, and you just get more of the person. Otherwise, I see it all the time. Like, they shut down, especially a younger employee. They can shut down a little bit. I'm just going to do what I'm asked. I'm not going to put myself out there. And you're trying to break down that wall, right? And I think appreciation can go a long way towards that. I have an example, actually. It's funny because it's almost a cliche thing, but it was a client who was struggling with some of their, I've got these millennial employees and I'm not sure I'm connecting on the right level. And, well, what are you doing, right? And one thing that came up was they needed to ask some people to work off for the weekend, right? Never fun. It needed to get done. It was a big new business pitch. And well, what'd you do to say thank you? Like, well, we had, lunch was in the office for the weekend. Like, all right, that feels like table stakes. And we gave him a $500 spot bonus. And I said, okay, let's start there, right? Because that $500 now is one, in their head, okay, great, I just worked 8 hours and I got extra $500. Thanks, I guess. But two, it's lost in the shuffle, right? It's part of their next paycheck. It's taxed. It's like it feels like a little something, right? And I said, what do you know about that person, right? What can we do? Pick one of them. And we found out there was one young woman who was just she's huge into music, right? So just send her a year of Spotify, right? Like, showed them right on Thanks, just 2 clicks, a year of Spotify. It will cost you literally a fifth of what it costs you to do the spot bonus, but I promise you it's going to go so much further, right? And so they did this, and it was like, she was blown away, right? This is not a huge cost, but it's something she's paying for, cares about, could now upgrade to the premium instead of the, base level, what plan that she was at. And it was like clicked, right? And then they were like going around, and it just forced that thinking. And so it doesn't even have to be about sending the thing the next time. It's like, oh, right, I need to understand who these people are, right? It's not just that I need them to work on the weekend. What does Sarah care about? What does Bobby what matters to them? And yeah, sometimes you can send something, but sometimes it's just having that conversation. Hey, you go to the concert this weekend, right? It opens up doors that I think make people feel more like interacting with you guys, frankly. It just feels like people who like each other, and that's just a fun place to work when you have that. And not a lot of places do. So I think it's huge when you're talking about employees and internal. And it does not have to be a cost center, right? It can just be little things that go a long way.
For sure. Yeah. And I would say too, on top of, with COVID, when we lost the ability to interact with each other so much, it comes in, in a big way, for that. Because now you hang up this call, and then now you don't see somebody sometimes for, weeks, maybe days. So just really allows, the opportunity to, make that thoughtful gesture, even though we're not together.
There's a funny story actually from COVID. You remind me of, we were all in bedrooms trying to figure out the Zoom thing. No one was quite comfortable with it. And we had I had one client her dog was just could not stop in the background barking, and she was so apologetic. I'm like, hi, it's totally fine. I get it. My kids could run in here at any point. Like, it's cool. But she was like mortified of it a little bit. And so after I was just like, there's a lot of things on the platform. So I just kind of searched Petco and is there anything here? And there was this little like dog makeover, $40 thing. So I sent it, and I was like, oh, I'll get Rowdy a haircut next time. Like, I'd love to have him on the call. And I mean, you would have thought like I sent like a $900 bottle of red wine or something.
Yeah.
It was just like, because it was, it almost became an inside joke, right? And that's how you make connections. It's not, again, not about the item, right? It's about, oh, that's funny. We connected. It's a thought. That stuff just goes so far. It's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Great.
You
love that story.
You mentioned like millennials in the workforce, and now we've got like Gen Z coming into the workforce. What do you wish you knew about leadership or culture building earlier in your career that you'd tell the younger entrepreneurs and business folk today? Yeah,
there's this like push-pull, right? So you want to have this sort of open culture, I think, where everyone's contributing, but you also can't then let people walk over you, right? And so how do you have this mix of like, you have to be a strong leader who, this is the direction we're headed, right? But I trust you all to help us get there. And what I found, and what I wish I did earlier, was really clearly define that vision of where it is. I knew it was in my head, but I don't think as we grew, and then the first employees knew it, right? My business partner knew it. Like, it was on the whiteboard day one, like, this is where we want to go with this. This is what it should mean. And it evolves, right? But you realize, like, man, if I'm not voicing that, I mean, it's marketing at the end of the day, right? You need to market your vision internally. And I think that's a key thing that sometimes it's easy to just do within your little group, leadership group, right? The VP's in a room and, hey guys, this is where we're headed, right? We need a more connected and grateful business world. But that needs to flow throughout. And if you're not careful, it stops in that room, and you think it's getting out, right? But those things aren't necessarily going out to the team. And now, instead of on a mission, having a team on a mission, right? It's a team who's just doing their jobs. And that is a totally different organization versus people who are bought in.
Yeah. No, it's totally different. And it's like, we've talked before about like your purpose being your boss at times, right? You're all aligned, and where the North Star is and how to, every time you're making a decision, when it's throughout your team like that, and it does make a huge difference. I'm glad you kind of brought that up as some advice to the younger business folks out there.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Mike.
Well, I was going to say, picking your North Star is so important. I think for a while we're a fast growth startup. Revenue's the North Star for the whole company. But is it? Like, does the employee who joined here because they truly believe in gratitude in business really care whether we hit 30 million, 80 million, 100 million? Like, for us, it needed to be the number of thanks sent, right? Because that is the connection. Each one of those is a connection point, and that is spreading gratitude in business. And so even just those little things that seem obvious in retrospect, I'm like, man, we were, obviously all those things matter to measure, but for the team, it wasn't about revenue, right? It was about the connection points, the number of businesses touching each other through gratitude. And just those little changes can make a huge difference in how people view their job and their mission.
Yeah. Maybe since we're on the topic a little bit of purpose, one of the things I always love to ask our guests, Brendan, is a question around purpose, because for this show and then as well for our agency work that we do, we just think it's just so important. So maybe we can just jump there and talk a little bit about it now. The question I typically like to ask our guests is, what is the role of having a really well-defined purpose, play, and then how do you see it at play there in your organization?
So on the broader kind of macro question, I think you really need that purpose to stay focused. And we feel it very acutely at Thnks because we've got this kind of huge addressable market, which sounds great on the surface, right? Everybody can use gratitude in business. Well, then it gets real easy to get watered down, and where are we focused and who are we trying to, sign up to utilize this? If it's everybody, it's nobody, right? That's kind of the classic business saying.
Right.
So you need that purpose in order to develop that focus, I think, and make sure you stay sort of on that mission, because otherwise you can kind of just chase the next thing that feels big, right? And you've lost the narrative when you do that. So for us, and it's become even more, I think, even more focused recently as AI has sort of started to take over and become the brain of business. Okay, we really need to be the heart, right? You can't lose that human to human element. And you realize we kind of almost have to rehumanize business. And it started maybe more with COVID, right? I mean, we started this business prior to that, but it really changed things when all of a sudden we went to Zoom calls and less human interaction, less in person. I still tell people, like, before you send a thanks, your number one job should be to go see someone in person. Go to the dinner, go shake the hand, have the meeting. It's just not possible to do it all the time, right? We just move at a different speed. Business has changed. So we're there to kind of fill in that gap a little. This isn't the end all be all of relationship building. It's just part of what you need to do. And it is that operationalize it, right? This needs to just be like building connections and relationships and gratitude need to be part of everything you do in business. It's small, it's frequent. It's not, we tell people all the time, the ABCs are great, right? Anniversary, birthday, Christmas, you're going to send gifts. This isn't gifts. Gratitude is about the day-to-day, the I'm thinking of you, the I heard you. And you got to make that an operational part of business, not just when things go wrong or just when we close a deal. It's just something we do on a day-to-day basis, just like we fill in our CRM. We need to also, find out, who haven't we said thank you to? And that's just a huge part of it.
Do you have any tips for, you talk about operationalizing that gratitude, for how companies can scale that gratitude and their EQ across large teams? What kind of advice would you give for that?
So, I mean, it certainly starts at the top with the leaders, right? You have to show it. You go back to showing it internally, right? If we don't show it internally, how do we expect anyone to show it to their customers and clients, right? They need to feel the power of it to start. So that's kind of getting the culture involved. Then I think you start small. You start with sort of if not as, it's still thoughtful, I guess, but it's more operationalized. Something like we had a client who every meeting where someone couldn't come because they said they didn't feel well or their child didn't feel well, we had them send a bowl of chicken soup just every single time. And they did an A/B test, right? And this was a little early on in Thnks, and it actually blew us away. We figured it would have a good impact, but they got every one of those meetings back, and actually on average 2 weeks sooner, versus the control group where, I forget what percentage, but it was like 15%, 20% never even came back, and they took longer to come back. So that was something that was just, this is something we're going to do, right? And it just starts to build that muscle. And then it's like, man, that really worked. Okay, now I can start thinking about on each individual call, each time, like, man, I did take like an hour of their lunchtime to pitch my business. Maybe it makes sense to just send over a little like lunch on me, right? Pick it up from DoorDash if you want. It doesn't have to be anything, super deep or expensive. Just, oh, I did that thing. Or the client who's, man, I'm so busy, I might have to cut our call short. Cool, I'm going to send you a night off cooking, right? Hey, you get home tonight, you don't worry about it. It's on me. Just a nice, simple thing. And so those things come from, I think, the operationalizing of some of those more sort of business impact, right? And then the last part is like, sometimes gratitude, I think you chalk it up to this sort of soft thing, right? And it is, it's nice, it's good, it's a virtue. But we're talking about it in a business context. That means you need to measure it. It's not just a nice to have. And that's the biggest thing to move a business from, okay, this is a lovely thing to do, but it shortened our sales cycle. It got more deals through the funnel, right? It got more ghosted deals to come back to the table, right? That thoughtfulness. And when you start showing those numbers, Now you bring along not just the people who understand it intrinsically, but the team who is focused more on the transactional. It's like, well, wait a minute, this is actually a business building tool, not just a nice to have. And that's you got to combine those things there.
I love these examples of having metrics. And if you've got any more, let me know, because this is like a question we often ask is like, yeah, how do you measure building, compassion, empathy, love into business? And, we know it's like just a tough question for people. And they're like, yeah, well, we do this one thing, but I'm sure you've got like a bunch of interesting KPIs that are, ways people have used it.
Yeah. And again, there's the good and bad of there's so many ways people use it, right? We've got number after number. But I also say like, there is the ROI of the client who picks up the call, right? The ROI of the renewal that doesn't have a lot of friction. That's kind of a no-brainer, right? And a lot of that comes from that relationship building. The ROI of just being able to call a client and have an honest conversation. Hey, what's not working, right? And all that comes from not being in a transactional relationship, right? Because you're gonna clam up a little. It even goes back to the younger employees we were talking about earlier, not wanting to open up and sort of be part of the conversation. Customers can be the same way. Why am I going to tell you that? I don't even know you. What are you trying to sell me, right? You don't want that feeling with the customer. So there's these sort of like soft, like more on the EQ side, I would say, of things that really have a huge impact. Now, how do we translate that to showing, okay, look, these sales cycles did close 2 weeks faster. Well, why is that, right? You go through the 5 whys. Well, ultimately, it's because when I make the phone call, they pick up now, right? And that literally can shorten across hundreds of deals. That's a huge difference maker across the board. So lots of examples like that, where it's sort of that little thing that feels like a small thing, but in aggregate adds up so much. And it does things like bring more deals through, gets more ghosted deals back. And ultimately, look, I always say it's a cup of coffee is probably not the thing that closed your $2 million deal, but it's certainly a piece of that. If you really want to look at ROI, if we use the cup of coffee example, if you send 10,000 cups of coffee, they cost $3-4 a piece. You close one extra deal out of that, you've probably already paid yourself back. So to me, sometimes the ROI conversation is almost silly. Like it is there, it's there if you're doing this small and frequently. And now it's just tied into your systems to show you which metrics matter, because it's going to affect almost all of them.
Yeah, I think on that ROI side, we just often talk so much about just like building that emotional connection with the client. And there are these consumption experience emotions that go with whatever your product or service is, right? And they can be negative or they can be positive. And what we like about your product is that so we have a service, and now we can layer something on there that does have the surprise and delight emotion attached to it. That is really, it's part of our service too. Like it's like, oh wow, I'm getting this kind of positive emotional connection with it, but it has really nothing to do with our actual service,
Right.
other than it's just this, relationship building, which we, from being on the marketing advertising side is just so important to us.
Yeah.
But it is really, when you can tap into that emotional connection, we always say you get 306% higher lifetime value from that customer. There's metrics and stuff that go along with that. So if you do have those metrics where you're tracking like how you use Thnks or things like that, you really want to see how it can back out on the other end. And this is the way you deal with the non-EQ side of the business that just doesn't want to do it because it's nice, right?
Right. We've got a lot of case studies on our website too that go through some different examples of ways people have used it and tracked their ROI specifically. The part that doesn't get talked about that I would add is, so we'll talk a lot about the company, right? We got the more deals closed, whatever that metric we were tracking is. And it maybe goes back to that sort of first story I was telling of why I learned the power of relationships. Individually, if you're doing this, well, one, it makes you feel good too, right? Makes your recipient feel good, makes you feel good. There's psychological benefits to it. But when you build those relationships 10, 15, 20 years down the road, that's someone you may do business with again. You may work for them. They may work for you. You may sell to them again, right? These are the best relationships you have in business you come back to over and over again. And that necessarily means you can't have a transactional relationship. Actually, my head of revenue right now at Thnks was my first boss over 25 years ago in New York in media. And so that was an example of a relationship, right? That we just stayed in touch, and there were years we didn't talk, right? But we just always had that connection. I appreciated learning from him. we'd always kind of stayed friendly. And then when the time came that I needed to make this hire, I'm like, you feel like moving to Nashville? And we just have stayed in touch over all those years, right? And it's those things that can make a huge difference, not just in this quarter, this deal, this year, but just pay dividends over the years and over time.
Yeah, for sure. I actually cannot wait to see or hear more about how you guys are going to incorporate AI into all this, because I think it'll be an example of AI done right for sure. So, one question I do have for you, Brendan. So we've talked about a lot already in terms of implementing this. There's metrics, there's the cultural component. It can be a little bit maybe perhaps overwhelming for a leader who wants to kick this off. So what would you tell them, perhaps what some of the first steps could be to building, this sort of EQ culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, it relates to a big conversation we had when we started our business, which was, on the one hand, we were trying to get some investors to kick things off, and they love SaaS and subscriptions and repeatable, metrics on revenue side. On the other hand, we said, man, this is something that requires people to feel, to understand, really, right? Because it's a slightly different way of doing business at the end of the day. And so we had purposely made it where you can sign up for free. You can just start sending, right? It is going to be on a transactional basis. You only pay if you actually send a gesture of appreciation. And I think that's key, in that this doesn't have to be a top-down, organizationally, this is how we're going to do it. I think you start in the one-to-one, right? You show it yourself to employees to start. These are my salespeople, and I want them to be out there doing this. I'm gonna start by being appreciative of them, right? I really, very specifically, this is the thing for you, and that I appreciate you. And then it starts that dialogue, right? I really appreciate you doing that for me. Okay. Well, do you have any customers you appreciate, right? Make it sort of organic and bottoms up. And I just find that works so much better. Look, that's not to say there aren't organizations that come in and they've got their operational, we're going to attach it to our HR system. Every birthday, every anniversary is going to have it. I think that's all great, and you should absolutely do those things. But if you really want it to be part of culture, it's got to be felt, not told, right? It's not, you have to do this. It's, do you like how that feels? Yeah. Okay, we're going to make your client feel that way, make your prospect feel that way, make your partner feel that way. So to me, it does start small. It's not about put $100,000 and then start firing off thank yous, right? Right. Build up, right? Do it. Maybe not the best for my business, but it truly for the long term it is, right? Because that is how people are like, okay, this is something, I get it now. It's not just a nice to have. Yeah. You gotta have that buy-in for sure. And the nice thing is you can experience it, right? It's an emotion, it's a virtue, it's something that it's part of what makes us human. So it's there for us. We just have to be open to the idea that, this is something that can build business, not just be nice.
Yeah, I love that you focus too on try and make it organic, from the start. Just if you really want that buy-in, I think is kind of important. So we've got a couple questions from the audience on YouTube here. So let's see. What's the simplest thank you gesture you've seen create outsized impact?
Man, there's a lot of probably really interesting examples in there. I think one of my favorite ones was a client who was telling me, almost like as an afterthought, sent an ice cream cone. It's literally, I think, maybe the lowest price item you can send. It's like $2.80 at Baskin Robbins or something. But it was specifically to a client who was in Phoenix. It was incredibly hot, and they were going to pick up their daughter right after the call. And I just love it because it's that connection to family, right? What better connection, right? What do you feel more deeply than family? And so acknowledging that in a way that didn't feel forced and was just, again, I think the fact that it was almost an afterthought and just a little hey, I appreciated talking to you, heard you, right? Made it more authentic. We always tell people, don't do a task, right? Don't thank and ask. It's not, here's a thing, can I have a thing in return? Separate those two ideas, right? And so when it comes across as just a natural, oh yeah, I have this thing, I might as well send you the ice cream cone, you're going to pick up your daughter. It just, that client was, it was in his pocket. It's whatever you need, basically. $3. So I love those sort of little moments that you don't even think much of, and it doesn't have any calculation to it. It's just this thoughtful thing that oh, I should definitely send that, right? And those are those little moments I think that make the biggest impact overall.
I love that.
Be human.
All right, we've got another question. Let's see if we can. All right. For leaders managing large or remote teams, how can they stay genuinely connected without spreading themselves too thin?
Yeah, I think this goes back to sort of operationalizing your. It's this weird dichotomy of like we need to be super thoughtful and in the moment, and yet it's very easy to let it slide, right? I view it a lot like calling my mom, to be honest, where I'm like, man, I should be doing that like more often than I am, right? And if I don't calendar it and have it on, like it's an easy thing to let slip. It kind of goes the same way with your sort of gratitude and thoughtfulness in business. I generally tell people until you have that muscle memory of making this part of your day to day, you got to calendar it just like you would a meeting, right? It's a thing you don't miss. It's Fridays at 1 p.m. I am going through and I've got my team and I'm going to figure out, what it is I'm going to send. And that might be everyone the same thing. Ideally, I get to the point where I'm sort of making it more personal. But each week you can just do a little something, right? And then now all of a sudden I'm getting that response and that reply to it. And it's now become part of what I do day to day. But unless I actually make it something that I force myself to do, like going to the gym, something like that, like you got to make it a habit. And once you do, it becomes part of what you do. And you realize the benefits. But if you don't do that to start, it's very easy for it to kind of fall off and just become something you do when there's a problem or you think there's, this person's unhappy. And that's okay. But it's not really where the real power comes in, right? It's those moments when you don't have to do it that really start to strengthen those relationships.
Right. Yeah. Surprise and delight.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's so important. This is just what behind our Bliss concept, building love into scalable systems is to move beyond the random act of kindness. Can you make this a habit? Can you somehow do this with consistency? Because that's where you really get that impact of scale. We got one more question from YouTube. Let's bring that up. You mentioned authenticity. What role does vulnerability play in leaders forming stronger connections with their staff? This is a good one. This is one of those Yoda skills, I think, as a leader that you do need to develop if you want to next level that EQ.
100%. And it's hard, right? You need to be the strong leader, but it's literally impossible to be authentic if you are unwilling to show vulnerability. It is just part of being human, if we go back to that, right? And I think, if you want to build trust, which is all ultimately comes down to, right? That's what the ultimate sort of thing relationships are about. You need to be honest, and honest means being vulnerable. There's no way to be open with someone if you're not going to be honest. And that, ultimately is kind of the equation of authenticity to me. So, I think everyone's kind of got that, those moments you feel like a fraud or what am I doing? Do I really know what I'm talking about here? I think that's okay. You can be open about that. I ride the roller coaster every single day, right? There's days I'm on top of the world. And then 2 hours later, I'm like, well, I'm a complete failure. This business is going to zero. And of course the answer is always in the middle, right? But I think I think it's okay to show your team, I don't always have all the answers. I'm just doing the best I can. I always try to bring it back to those relationships and say, look, I'm going to screw some things up, right? But if I've got trust, if I've got your trust, if I've got our customers' trust, if I've built those relationships, I can screw something up and it's going to be okay, right? I will have the benefit of the doubt. And if you're not unwilling to show vulnerability, if you're not willing to be authentic, I don't think you get that benefit of the doubt because you won't build those relationships. So I think it's incredibly important. I mean, it's a huge part of making a connection with someone and driving that EQ, like you said.
Yeah, and I think if you want that psychologically safe place at work, so when there is an issue, that comes up or arises, it's not just being buried or covered up or just, it's being addressed and no one's worried about it, and you're better for that, right. Or if someone's got some crazy idea that they, might be super innovative, you don't want to be shooting those things down.
Right.
So thinking a little bit about kind of what you've built here with Thnks, and your purpose in general, do you see purpose as kind of a larger part of a larger legacy you want to leave in the business world, your purpose throughout all this?
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to tell you what is ultimate success for me, we think there's this it's a new way of doing business, right? We call it gratitude commerce, right? Because people ask, what category are you in? I'm like, well, I'm not gifting, I'm not certainly not direct mail enablement. People would put us in this bucket. I'm like, I think it's gratitude commerce. Like, it's still business. It's just based around gratitude. And so my ultimate hope would be that future leaders think of appreciation the same way you think of marketing or finance, right? It's foundational to your business. It's planned. It's budgeted for. It is just something that we do. If my legacy is shifting business culture from transactional to relational, like genuine relationships, like that would be really meaningful to me, right? I always had this idea because, like I said, I started in media planning, and I'm old. So when I started, right, we did magazines and out of home and TV. There's a little line at the bottom that said like online, and it was whatever was left over, right? I'm like, and now obviously that's your whole media plan, right? I would love if I could get to a point where people build these media and communication plans, and we just start, if you have a little leftover budget, there's a gratitude line there, right? There's a relationship building line. And then I think if we could get that, now you're talking again, operational. All right, now it starts to grow. And one day, that's a line right under your TV spend and your billboards and here's your relationships and gratitude spend, right? And everybody's got it. And it's not just Thnks, right? It's a whole ecosystem of things that are built around relationships. That's my ultimate dream of where this all heads and ends.
Yeah, I love that. It should be under. So we've got the bottom line with profit. You really need bottom line of people and planet in there. And so it should be under that. If you're looking for some bottom line people related KPIs, it's like one of those things you can use to fill in that column, which we're trying to move more companies to be thinking about those things versus just that one area. So one question I ask all the businesses that and leaders that come on here is some form of this: what role does love play in business?
So I think if you lead with love, right, very closely related to compassion and empathy, it creates that ripple effect, right? So it's sort of like when we talked about the coffee doesn't necessarily close the deal for you, but it starts that chain of events, right? It means that phone call gets picked up quicker. It means that deal goes down quicker. I think love has a similar effect, right? It starts this ripple around you of like, you can become a magnet if you do it authentically. Like, people want to work with you, do a deal with you, be part of your team, because it feels good, right? This is someplace I want to be, that I do feel safe, that I do feel like I can put my ideas out there. I want to do more business with you, right? And it all kind of starts there. And it doesn't have to be about being soft, I don't think, right? It's, again, being human. It's being authentic. It just builds trust and loyalty when you put that out there. And all those things come from that ripple effect of starting with like, yeah, dude, I'm putting love out there. I love what I do. I love who I work with, right? I love everything about what I'm doing. People feel that. It's like having an aura around you. And I think it just affects every single thing that you do in business if you can put it out there.
Yeah, it seems like ultimately that's the whole reason we're here.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, great insights. Brendan, I love the points too, thinking, moving things from people thinking one thing to actually feeling one thing is so key. Now, for our listeners, if they want to connect with you afterwards or learn a little bit more about Thnks, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, I mean, Thnks.com. So we couldn't afford to buy the vowel when we started the company, so it's THNKS, no way. But honestly, feel free, reach out, connect on LinkedIn, email me. My email is bkamm@Thnks. That's BKAMM, 2 M's like mom, @Thnks.com. I love to hear from people. I love hearing how gratitude has impacted people's works and lives. I'm open, so please do reach out if you have any interest in just talking shop about gratitude and love and thoughtfulness, or are interested in Thnks itself.
These are conversations we need to have. We need to have more of them. Brendan, thank you for joining us today. Thank you to our audience for listening. But yeah, because saying there's just so much disconnect going out there right now, especially, we're just feeling it from all parts of life. So I would love people to implement more of these kind of systems that are designed for connecting us human to human. So please check out Thnks.com. It's a great product. We can vouch for it. We've used it for years. Great to have you on the show today, Brendan. If you're out there and you think this conversation can help someone think differently about how they run their business or gratitude in their business, please share it with someone who will benefit. And we will see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.
Appreciate y'all.